So as you heard that little recording notification, this meeting is being recorded. And if you are in person, you might see someone standing up here interpreting and a table in the back of the room. So we do have live Spanish interpretation provided at this meeting today. And we're really excited about that. So thank you everyone for your patience last meeting as I attempted to interpret. We're really excited to have interpreters here and be able to increase our accessibility for this meeting. So at any moment, since we are adjusting to this process, we might need to slow down, we might need to repeat some things, just so we can make sure that it is accessible and that everyone can hear equitably. So thank you again for your patience as we need to make those decisions. And I think does that cover the interpretation bit? Sure.
Muy buenas noches a todos. Bienvenidos a esta reunión. A través de la reunión vamos a tener interpretación simultánea al español. Si usted necesita interpretación o le gustaría escuchar de preferencia en español, estamos aquí para servirles. Mi colega Estefanía, que está atrás de la mesa, tiene el equipo listo. Puede venir hacia ustedes si usted necesita interpretación. Nos levanten la mano o si a través de la reunión tienen algún problema con el equipo auditivo, déjenos saber y estaremos aquí para apoyar. Cuando haya una sesión de preguntas o respuestas abiertas, siéntase libre de participar en su lenguaje de preferencia y nosotros asistiremos con la interpretación al inglés. So we will have interpretation throughout the meeting. You may see us moving around, so please enunciate. So speak up so that we can hear you from any corner of the room, and that way we can try to stay out of the way, but at the same time be here to interpret everything. We will have a moment when we have a moment for Q&A. We will first let our Spanish participants speak, and we will interpret right after. So you will hear a pause right in between, or you may not understand, but please know that everything that is being said will be interpreted. Thank you.
Thank you for those instructions. Okay, so we are doing a welcome and some meeting logistics right now. We will then do a committee roll call, a member intro, and code of conduct. So before I pass it to do some of the roll call, I will go over some in-person and virtual reminders. So if you are in person, if you have a question or comment, please raise your hand or your name placard. And we do have blank ones available if you're a member of the public and like your own name placard. If you're virtual, if you have a question or comment, feel free to use the chat or raise your virtual hand, and Sarah will let me know. And when it is time for your comment or question to be acknowledged, we will go ahead and proceed in the order that we receive them. So in terms of the order of question and comments, we're going to do the same thing as last time in terms of steering committee in person, then steering committee online, public in person, and then public online. However, I do want to direct your attention to, if you picked up a meeting agenda in English or in Spanish, on one side is the agenda, and on the other side, there's some participation protocols. I am going to repeat these. So these are the same as what we've been doing, but in order to make it easier for everyone to understand what's going on and what the order of things are, we have notated these down. So this is what we will be following today. And so for an item presentation, basically the way that it's going to work with the numbered agenda, we will do, so there's the numbered agenda and then there's the sub numbers, right? So we will get through all sub numbers of an agenda item before we open it up to the public. That is so we can proceed through the agenda. We're still stopping through every agenda item for public questions or comments, but we are using a little bit more of an order that way we can try and stay on topic, get through everything, and hear from everyone equitably in a way that has the same order every time. So basically how it's going to work is a steering committee member or district representative will present each agenda item. So that means the item, and then within the sub items, the steering committee members will be able to discuss every sub item. So if there's a question that they have for the district, or if they need to discuss internally, that is encouraged. However, the public will wait until we get through items A and B. After item C, I will say we're opening it up to the public, and that's when you will have the opportunity to question or comment on that item specifically. So, as I said, when we get to that bit, steering committee members will discuss it, and then the public will share questions or comments. And then the steering committee members will be able to answer questions, discuss the considerations. The district will be able to pop in there as well. And then that's how it works for the items and the sub items for public discussion. For voting items, it's a little bit different because we want the public to have the ability to question or comment before the steering committee makes a vote. So even if the vote, so say, I'm gonna give an example. Say that we have on agenda item 3, say that we have A, B, and C. The normal standard would be to be passed through A, B, and C, and then we say public questions and comments. But if there was a voting item for B, we would open it up for questions and comments before the steering committee votes. That way, we can all, if you have something that you had to say that would affect potentially how they vote, we want to make sure that you're back. So this is a more formalized version of what we've been doing, because like I said, we want to try and make sure that we can get participation throughout every level, but in a way that's very organized and in a way that allows everyone to know when and where they can comment. So like I said, this is based off what we've been doing, and we want to try and do this every time. So it shouldn't be anything too new or too crazy, but since I am presenting this for the first time, I do want to see if there's any questions about how this works. Any questions in person or online? Okay, great. And like I said, we're trying this for the first time today. We might need to make adjustments. Please bear with us as we make those adjustments, and thank you for your patience. And us trying to do this is really just trying to hunker down on making it more accessible and allowing for public participation throughout. And just in a way that's organized and makes sure that everyone knows when they can participate and. So thank you for that. Siri, okay, and interpretation logistics, we already went over, so thank you for that. And like I said, if we need anyone to pause or repeat, we might ask you to do that, and that's just in the name of equity and making sure that we can all hear and participate. So going over the code of conduct before we do roll call. This is once again not new, but just to go over it briefly in case we need to be brought back to it later. Members will treat everyone with courtesy and respect. We will avoid personally attacking or demeaning anyone. We will avoid interrupting others who have the floor. We will avoid disrupting or delaying the meeting. We will strive to be fair and unbiased towards each other, the public, and the district. We value each other's time and respect each other's opportunity to speak. We will strive to reach consensus, but agree to disagree if need be. We will listen courteously and attentively to the public, and we will strive to hold each other accountable to the code of conduct. So thank you for listening and observing the Charter Code of Conduct. Before we dive into the agenda, we're going to go ahead and do some introductions. So if I haven't met you before, or if you missed it earlier when I said it, my name is Britta. I am the facilitator here today, and I'm happy to be here. See so many of you again. Some new faces to the new people who are joining in person, but have been with us online. And I'm the facilitator, like I said, and then before, I think we want to allow steering committee members a little bit more time to get here before we do steering committee roll call. So I'd like to pass it to the district for intros, if that's okay.
Yes. All right, this is roll call. Could I have Dr. Alberto Ayala,
Here.
David Yang,
Here. Amy Roberts,
Here.
Mark Lautenheiser,
Here.
Jaime Loomis,
Here.
Ray Porter,
Here.
Sarah Fullock Parson,
Here.
Luis Hernandez.
Here. He said here. Here.
Did I miss anybody from the district? My name is Janice Lamb Snyder. I'm with the Sacramento Air District, Director of the Community Air Protection Program.
Great, thank you, Janice, and we can pass it now to CARB staff. Where are CARB staff in the room?
Hi, I'm Adriana Smith.
We're both.
I'm Kevin Dolan, and we're both in the Office of Community Air Protection at the California Air Resources Board.
Great, thank you. I think we can pass it to members of the public to introduce themselves. Hi, my name is. Hi, my name is.
Hi, my name is Iris Cannon, and I am from the SAC EJC with Herman. And I'm just visiting to see how it goes. Thank you. You're welcome.
You know what, I think the battery's dying on it. It goes down on its own.
Hello?
We tried. We don't know if I will.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Keila Euseda y pues estamos con la Coalición de Justicia Ambiental.
Good afternoon, Kayla Uceda, and I am with the EJ, the Environmental Justice Coalition of Sacramento.
I'm Jose Saldana, South Sacramento resident. Herman Launa with Saki JC. Michael Benjamin, the second district director from Vice Mayor Katie Mayor.
All right, that is it for members of the public.
One more back there.
Oh, yes, we do have one more. Sorry, I missed you. I can see you in that seat. Did not mean to exclude you from that.
I'm Erica Hadamian. I'm here with SAC JC and I'm in South Sacramento.
Thank you. Okay, so now I ask, do we want to do, okay, great. So you're gonna do it instead of Stephanie.
Okay, we'll start with the members that are present. Bill Knowlton. Here. Bishop Chris Baker. Here. Vincent Valdez. Here. Richard Lincoln. Here. Barry Boyd. Here. And Morgan Brown.
Here.
Okay, then we'll go with the people online. As far as I see, we have Jamala Green,
Here,
Pat Shelby,
present.
and Rhonda Henderson.
Here,
Okay. And Stephanie?
Stephanie will join if we have a problem.
Oh, okay. Okay, Stephanie, she probably having a hard time.
Unmuting.
Do I go over everybody else's name as well? Okay. Oh, Michael Lampkin.
here,
Thank you. Okay, Tito Hong. John Rice. Rachel Brown. And Reina Moreno. Okay.
Thank you.
I did it.
Great job. Okay, and then I want to see if we had any other members of the public joining us from online. If you are a member of the public and you are online, if you feel comfortable unmuting and introducing yourself, we welcome that. And if you just want to listen in, your name will be noted in attendance, but no further action will be taken if you do not unmute and introduce yourself.
Are you gonna ask their names? Okay.
All right, that is great. So, thank you everyone for doing those introductions and, allowing some space for that in the back and forth. At this time, we will now go over the agenda. So, we did start a little bit late. We started, I think, at 6:12, so the rate will be ending at 8:12, unless we can breeze through it, knock on wood. So, after we finish up this agenda item, we'll be moving into administrative items. Within that, we have approving the meeting minutes, a membership update, and the rescheduling of the May meeting. We dedicated some time to following up on February's meeting, which we'll get into later. For discussion items, we have a vote to be a CERB community, which is also a discussion item, so we'll discuss and potentially vote. And then, subcommittee updates as usual, outreach and CERB. We'll spend some time doing new business and upcoming meeting topics. Even though we are taking public comments throughout, we always reserve time at the end for public comments that do not relate to the agenda items. And finally, we will adjourn. All right, so, moving into administrative items, I am going to go ahead and ask Vincent to cover the approval of meeting minutes.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from last month? And at this time, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes unless there's discrepancies or anything that needs to be added.
And also all steering committee members, you should have had a copy of the meeting minutes at your name placard when you, chose a spot or sat down at the spot that you were designated. Does anyone need the minutes? Did you not receive them? I can bring them around. Okay,
This is Pat Shelby. I motion that we approve the minutes.
We need a second.
I second.
Okay, and a second made. So do we vote now? Okay,
do you want to read through the names?
all those in favor of this motion, I'll start with the members that are present. Bishop Chris Baker. Yes. Point of bill. Oh, yes.
Chris wasn't here for the last meeting, so we can't vote on the minutes, correct?
Oh, well, he was online.
No, I'm okay.
You weren't online last month? Okay. Okay, and well, okay, do the number. Okay, Bill Knowlton,
Yes.
Vincent Valdez, yes. Richard Lincoln.
Aye.
Barry Boyd,
Yes.
Morgan Brown.
No.
Okay, online, Jamala Green,
Yes.
Patricia Shelby,
Yes.
Rhonda Henderson,
Yes.
Michael Lampkin,
Yes.
Stephanie. And Rena Marino, she wasn't here either. Okay. Motion's been made and seconded, and all agreed, it passes.
Test, okay, this is working. Okay, great. Thank you for voting on those minutes. Next is a membership update, so I will invite Janice to give that membership update.
All right, so the steering committee, voted to, the steering committee had, recommended for the district to accept a new member. Her name is Reina Moreno, and so we have already provided, an acceptance letter, for Reina, and we're currently just waiting on, correspondence and scheduling an orientation meeting with her. So that is that. There is also an update on Dignity's health representative. Dignity's representative, primary member was John Rice. They are choosing to change, the primary membership to, Stephen Street, who is a part of Dignity Health. And so, they're gonna be, going through the process of, changing their primary member.
Thank you, Janice. So now we will move into rescheduling the May meeting. So the May meeting was scheduled on a holiday. So there are some options on the screen, and I'm gonna pass it to Janice to talk about this in more light.
So the May meeting lands on, originally May 27th. That is a holiday for most folks, and most folks might be even out of town. And so we are looking to reschedule the May meeting, and we have provided a few options. One is the 20th, June 3rd, or June 4th. We understand that, it's a May meeting going into June, but it's, the week right after. So. And, Vincent had, who is the co-lead of the SERP subcommittee, has, offered to provide that particular date, because it's the SERP subcommittee meeting, as one of the dates that could be available, because a lot of members already attend that meeting as well. So with that, we were planning on submitting putting out a poll, for these dates. Before we sent out the poll, we wanted to, have a discussion on, do these dates look good? Are there any additional dates you all wanted to look at? And once we settle on that, we'll send out a poll and get that scheduled.
Janice, can I ask a question? So both the subcommittee, sorry. So both the subcommittee, CERT meeting and the steering committee will be combined as one meeting, if we so choose.
It will be in replacement of the SERP subcommittee meeting.
Replacement, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, sorry.
So we'll move the CERT subcommittee meetings when.
That's for you guys to decide.
Any other questions? I did just want to say though, did it go off again? Okay. I did just want to say though, if we did have the meeting on the 3rd and the meeting on the 4th, that would be back-to-back meetings in the same week. I don't know, that's just a lot logistically for the air district and in regards to the community members who have things to do. And so, I think the CERT meeting would be okay to have the regular, subcommittee meeting on the CERT meeting, and we could talk a lot about the CERT stuff at that meeting. Just my ideas.
Hello, any other discussion from subcommittee members? So Janice did say a survey is going out, but if there's any points of information or questions that you have that you think would benefit other members hearing, feel free to raise your name placard. If not, they will send out a survey later and this will be updated to come. Okay, so now that is the end of the administrative items, as I went over in the beginning, when we get to the end of an agenda item, I will open it up to the public for any questions or comments about what we covered during that agenda item. So are there any questions or comments about any of the administrative items before we move on to our next agenda item? Yes, I will come to you.
Is this picking up the Zoom or is it these mics?
Both, but this helps when people are sometimes quiet.
I was just curious of Raina's affiliation. Since, you guys mentioned the new member and I was curious what organization she belonged. Thank you.
Community member,
Okay,
Residency,
cool. Thank you.
resident.
resident.
All right, any other questions from, or comments from the public about, the administrative items? I saw, I think it was just Sarah asking for me to let me make sure. Yeah, okay, great. Okay, thank you for that. So we can go ahead and move on to February follow-up. So I will pass it to Janice. Janice,
All right, the district, the co-leads and the facilitators debriefed after the February meeting. And we thought it would be a good idea to make some space for the district to do a few things, three items. One really is to acknowledge the experience everyone had during the February meeting. Two is to provide some information regarding some public comments that might have not been clear to everyone. And the third is to share our district's commitment to our steering committee members and to our public about ensuring that we have an inclusive space for everyone to participate. So with that, the first item that I have is, the interpretation services that we had in the February meeting. We did receive a request the day before to provide Spanish interpretation at the Monday meeting. And we definitely thought that that was important to provide access to our communities. And we did have members of the public who was here to receive the services. So that really changed the format of the meeting that particular day. And that was new to all of us, all of the steering committee members, as well as members of the public. And so we really just want to acknowledge everyone's patience with working with us through a process and creating a space where we are having an inclusive conversation. As you guys can see, today we are doing simultaneous interpretation for those here in person. This month we have during the public notice, we did put some language in our public notice that for those who do need interpretation, to provide that request to us by a specific date. And moving forward, that is what the process will be. We'll release a public notice. We will have receive a request from members of the public who need it. Also by a certain date, and that really is to ensure that we have adequate time to secure the services that we need. As Britta was sharing earlier today, we also would really appreciate that, I tend to talk sometimes really fast. And so just to be really mindful for the interpreters to be able to interpret what we're saying, to slow down our speech so that they have that opportunity to interpret appropriately. So with that, there was also public comments made last month where there was a request for transparency in incentive funding and funding in general. We know that this is a very important topic for our steering committee members as well as for the public. And we will continue to have these conversations moving forward. One of the ways that our district has been proactive about transparency was that, we have posted for many years now information about incentive projects and implementation funds onto our website. It lists the different types of projects, how much funding is listed for each project, and who it goes to. Ray, one of our district staff, came to a steering committee meeting late last year as well to give a short presentation on incentive funding. So really a commitment on our part to ensure that there is transparency. Another tool that has just come out, thanks to CARB, is the Community Hub 2.0, where there is a map where all the projects across the state are listed, how much funding, how much emissions were reduced due to these projects. And it's really a tool for all of the questions, or a lot of the questions that you guys have had through up to this time. And so I'm gonna ask Marina, and we can also send this link out afterwards to provide folks with a couple of these links. One for the incentive funding links, and then the Community Hub 2.0. So Marina, I know you're online. If you can throw that in the chat for folks who are online, that would be great. And then the second question was regarding whether or not Macro Partnership has received any funds regarding the use of its facilities, and work it has done for the steering committee in tracking the disbursement of the outreach funds. The simple answer is no. Macro Partnership and the executive director, Bill Moulton, has made it very clear to the district as well as the steering committee that it's staff time to manage the outreach funds, and the utilization of these facilities have been really in kind to support the steering committee and to the community. With that, I have Rhonda here, who can share. Rhonda is the co-chair of the outreach subcommittee, and she will share the process in which the steering committee uses to utilize its funds, and what the funds have been spent on to date. So Rhonda, I'm going to pass it to you to go through an introduction, and then what the steering committee has spent its outreach funds on, and how much we have left.
Okay, thank you, Janice. Good evening, everyone. What's on the screen is our financial tracking for the steering committee's subcommittee outreach budget. And I think it started like 3 years ago. And as you can see, 2 years ago. So you can see that we started in April, and the first thing we spent the money on was on a website developer. And we did that in 3 phases. And that's probably the biggest portion of the money that we spent. And we have we were started off with $25,000, and we still have $15,223.61 remaining in the balance. So we've been very diligent and careful how we spend the money. We didn't spend it frivolously. You can look and see what was spent. We did that. The big monitor, what was that big monitor that's over at the school? We had some vendors there that we used for the children and so forth. So the process for getting reimbursed, because we have to get reimbursed first, and so in order to do that, we have to submit an invoice, and then that invoice spells out what it's for, who it's to, the amount, the date, and when it's needed. And that invoice is signed off by myself and at least one of the leads. And so that's what we've been doing all along. And then we will receive a check. It could be in the mail, or we can pick it up, whichever works best. Most of the time, we just have them mail it to us. We also have the approval to spend without coming back to the general ABC 617 steering committee for permission, $500 or less. If it's over 500, then we have to come back to the main committee and present our reasonings and purpose for spending money that's over $500. Are there any questions? Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Rhonda. If there are questions from the steering committee, as a reminder, we will take those throughout. And we will take questions or comments from the public once we get to the end of the segment. So thank you for your patience as we work through that. So now I will pass it to Vincent, to give an update for the February follow-up as well. Do you have a mic over there?
I do, thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, I just wanna to address the steering committee, the community, and, the air district and CARB. And so, I didn't mean to stir up the meeting last month when I was asking for sponsorship of our event and looking into how we're gonna straighten out those things for future organizations in the community who we could possibly support. We're looking at that. But, I do really feel that it would be great if our steering committee could table at the event along with the air district with a live stream of our monitor, which is monitoring air just a half a mile down the street. Because at the other events we were at, it was really effective and it drew people to that screen. I'm not gonna say like a moth to a flame, but it was, they came to the screen and they wanted to see the science. They wanted to see what we were talking about in the air. And so I spoke to the board of United Latinos and the committee of our event. And we're offering an invitation to the steering committee to please just come out and table at our event. And for the air district to come out and bring the live feed of the their monitor at our Bay Street monitor over at Fernbacon Junior High School. And so if that's possible, we would love to have you guys come on out as well as the air district too. I mean, California, I get confused with this Air Resources Board online, but it's CARB, and so CARB can come out too. So I just wanted to update everybody, and I did learn a lot from the discussions during the meeting and the discussions after the meeting. And I appreciate everybody's input and helping me learn in the process. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Vincent.
And I really hope we do table them.
Do you have any volunteers?
So that was the end of our February wrap up. So I want to see now, as you all very patiently waited, if there are any questions or comments first from the steering committee. Okay, yeah, I will bring the mic over to.
Any, well, before I answer this question, Vincent, hopefully we have, we'll be able to come out and do outreach. In your statement, that wasn't quite clear. You asked the United Latinos if we could come out on the table without a charge. Is that what you were?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, that made me swallow this thing. Thank you, brother. And my question is, can a tracking document of the total AB 616 grant be made available on paper to the public at the next meeting?
So the question was if a paper printed copy of the tracking of all our financials could be available at the next meeting.
So first, we do have a lot of our annual reports that are currently online right now. And so, Marina, when you're online, we also send this out. We do have a lot of that information online already posted. As we move forward, that is something definitely we can do. And that involves discussions of different buckets of money. And so, I think we're gonna be asking for us to think about what our next few months' topics would be. And definitely that's something that, it's on top of our mind and can discuss.
So short answer, no at present. So it may be a couple of months until the physical copy will be available to us.
Just a reminder to use the mic for the interpreter. So even though we heard that, could you please say it again?
My apologies, in short, so no time soon will a paper copy of a detailed budget be available, maybe 617 budget. As you stated, so it will be a couple of months before one will be readily available for both the steering committee and the public.
I think the steering committee can make a decision to have the district come and bring a budget discussion at the next meeting if it chooses, but there's also additionally, topics that the steering committee has also brought, to the table, and so I think that discussion is needed.
Well, that would be great, but just so, put a finer point on it, when will a physical copy on paper be available for the steering committee and to the public, the detailed budget?
Yeah, we are working, with our finance department, right now, because we're going through our budget cycle, so for those who don't know, we work on a fiscal year, and so right now, our, finance department is, preparing the budget, and so I'll have to go back and talk to our controller in terms of when we can have that, but it may be as soon as next month, but I want to talk to our controller before, I can actually make that commitment.
Oh, I appreciate that, Dennis. Yes, yeah, actually, my mindset was previous years and not fiscal 23, 24. So the previous years, budgets are available on request, or we change that, are available online to view the detailed budget, not the bucket budgets.
Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't pushing for this, but that would be nice to have.
All right, any other questions from steering committee members, either in person or online, relating to the February follow-up? All right, I'll see if there's any questions or comments. Oh, yes, sorry, I said to you next, before we do.
So I did have a question in regards to, the event for, Vince. My understanding is that we have this bucket of outreach funds, it's to be able to do outreach. Like vendor events and most vendors, they ask you to pay a fee. I guess my question is, if it's not a conflict of interest, why is it that the steering committee could not approve to provide, even if it's not the, the amount that you requested, but being able to provide some form of support, because the assumption is if a member of the public or somebody on the committee came and they had an event that they wanted to request support for, that's what these funds are for.
Janice, I'll pass it to you to answer that first.
So we are working with our district council to, provide some guidelines, regarding conflict of interest. We currently employ, members who, maybe haven't, read the charter lately. There is a, provision in the charter where it states that if there is a conflict of interest, the steering committee member can, recuse himself from the vote. And then I think in one of the appendices, it might be appendix C, but don't quote me on that, it's one of the appendix. It also, talks a little bit about, what is an actual conflict of interest, what is a, maybe a conflict of interest, and what might be a perceived conflict of interest. And so, I think the answer that we have right now is, that, United Latinos have provided that, response, in terms of making that offer to the steering committee, and that, as our council is providing more guidance, we can have further discussions about, future, organization.
Okay, and any further steering committee discussion? All right, members of the public, any questions or comments?
I had a question.
Okay, sorry, before I pass it to the person in the back, I saw raise their hand, we did get a notification that there is an online one, so I'm gonna walk over and put the mic in front of the owl, and then you may ask your question or make your comment.
Are you speaking to me, Rhonda? Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Don't we have the budgets already online with the Air District for the previous years? That you can go and
Yes.
access them at any time?
Sorry, I missed that last part.
I said, don't we have the previous budgets for the Air District online on their website that people from the public and the committee can access at any time?
Yes, that is correct.
So Barry,
Janice,
you can just find out where it's at and go online and see the previous budgets.
Thank you, Rhonda. Maybe I was speaking too low, but we covered that. Janice did, but thank you.
Vincent should be able to help you find it.
All right, thank you, Rhonda.
Sure.
Okay, now I believe we can pass it to the public, so I'm gonna walk around and they can have a mic.
Hi, this is Erica Harneal. I have a couple questions. Does the steering committee, are there any fraud, waste, and abuse policies in place for how this money is used? My second question is, are there any policies in place for how the information, I'm assuming no, because, you know, Vince is apologizing for it now, but if there's a member who maybe is a part of an organization that does good work in this community or related work in this community, how does that information get brought back to the steering committee for it to be requested for them to, you know, participate or make use of some of this funding? Like, are there any policies in place for that to happen? So that someone like Vince doesn't have to like just ask for himself, like, is there, who does the agenda? How does that stuff get brought up? And then the third thing is the 15,000 up there a flat dollar amount for outreach is a whole, or do you guys have an indirect cost rate, you know, before that money? I'm just curious how the budget is worked out.
Yeah, so first, I'm gonna go back to Janice, and I want to say thanks also for those comments, because sometimes how these things get brought up is how we're made aware of what we need to do better in, so thank you.
Fair. So the first, let me just make sure I got all the questions. The first question is whether or not there is a policy, that allows us, allow somebody like Vincent to bring up different events.
First question, is there a fraud, waste, and abuse policy? Is it for these funds?
Fraud, waste, and abuse policy, is that correct?
So we do have the guidelines for our AB 617 outreach funding that we have provided and presented to the steering committee on October 26th. We have guidelines for a copy of that, if you'd like that available. So that is the guidelines that we have put for the steering committee to ensure that, you know, there is some fraud protections, et cetera. In addition to that, hello?
Yeah.
In addition to that, when steering committee members sign the paperwork, they also sign a conflict of interest form. Currently, you know, when they sign that up, that goes to the district. I think a good point that you're making is, you know, how do everybody else have access to that information? And we can discuss with the steering committee how to provide that to the group and the public.
The other question.
Oh, indirect cost rate. So yeah, is that budget right there, are they directly pulling that, like, do they have access to that full $15,000 something amount? Or is there an indirect cost rate included where, you know, a certain percentage goes towards?
There is no indirect, so the district provided $25,000 to the steering committee to help direct those funds. So there are no indirect fees. Literally, I think.
What is, okay. That money, I hear you, that money up there is directly what they have access to, there's not a percentage that's taken out. Okay, thank you.
Janice said correct, but it didn't come through the mic. Was that the end of your questions, or?
My first question was the fraud, waste, and abuse policies for this money. The second was, what's your process for, like, putting things on the agenda, you know, so that folks like Vince don't have to say, hey, can this money be used at our event, whatever, like, you know, what is that process? Because if it is a conflict of interest, then Vince should have abstained, right? It was brought up appropriately from another member, like the chair or president.
Typically how it's been coming through in this past future or past and past, is that, these events typically get brought up in the outreach subcommittee report out. And then in addition to that, at the end of the meeting, there's also a new business item where steering committee members can share information about the different events, and that is also when it's brought up. So that's currently what we have as a process.
Thank you.
And I would also say that they're welcomed from the public as well. People have brought them up during public comment, so. Okay, I see a hand from Vincent, so I'm going to pass. Okay, I'm keeping this one. Thank you, Stephanie, for covering that over there as well.
And just for clarity, so the process is, we talk about it at the outreach subcommittee, and then none of the money is ever spent or dispersed until the whole steering committee votes on it. So we have to vote on anything that comes out of that budget, the steering committee at the regular steering committee meeting has to vote on it.
Just as a clarification on that, it is any funding that is $500. And under $500, it's considered a direct expense. So for example, you can see that, you know, there was a $50 for using a studio to, I think it was to put together the box fan filters for the phase 3 event. And so that would have been made directly with 2 signatures, one from the outreach subcommittee, outreach co-lead, and a steering committee co-lead in order for that to be issued.
And I see Rhonda's hand is up online, so I'm going to bring the mic over to the owl, so that Rhonda, you may speak now.
Okay, so what Janice just said, and I mentioned it when I went over the report, we have access to $500 that we can spend without coming back to the steering committee, because we didn't want to have to come back for every nickel or dollar for something that we need to get. So that was approved by the steering committee already. Anything over 500, we have to come back to the whole steering committee to get permission and to vet it, to see if we really need to do whatever we're planning to do with the money that's over $500.
Thank you, Rhonda. And Barry had his name placard next.
It was about to be in stereo. Quick question, I think, Janice, you alluded to it, for those individuals who don't use online sources, just not everybody is online savvy. The reality is, and going more into that, lower income neighborhoods, particularly people of color, the coverage and accessibility isn't at 100%. In fact, we have the lowest numbers. But just by stating that, if you did say it, I apologize for having you repeat it. But what other sources would someone have if not able to go online to look at past budgets?
We can also mail them if there's a request.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also the steering committee has brought materials to the meeting upon request as well. So that's also another option. And then, yes, we did have a member of the public next, and Stephanie's bringing them back. Thank you.
Thank you. So I wanted to clarify, when I asked Bill if Macroad had received any money, it was to help me gain an understanding of how the steering committee was self-dealing, and it became a conversation about Macroad as a fiduciary. Now, what raised my concern and the perception of self-dealing was that there was a $200 table available. But they asked for 1,000, and I'm trying to do this so it's not about events, but it's about the entirety of the process. And so when you asked for 1,000, which was 800 more than what was needed to table, and I brought it up as a conflict of interest, Pat and Bill said it's not if we put it forward, which goes back to Erica's question about a fraud and waste policy. It doesn't make me feel better that the whole steering committee has to vote on it when everybody seemed to be in a rush to just spend this money. I don't know of other communities that have bought themselves T-shirts and, you know, it wasn't just Vince asking that. Again, it was the Coleys rushing to co-sign. It was Carr being silent when at their recent Environmental Justice Advisory Committee, they brought up these guidelines for conflict of interest. So obviously it's something important. Pastor Bishop was gonna vote on something that he wasn't even here for. And so my concern is this process in its entirety and the perception to the public. Now, as a further conflict of interest, I don't know if any of those folks getting paid for those services are affiliated with anyone on the steering committee. Are any of those fees going to groups affiliated with the steering committee? And if you're spending over $2,000, are you going through a bidding process to find the best bang for your buck, or is someone on the steering committee getting that money? And so that's the perception that I'm concerned about. It wasn't just Vince. It's the looseness and comfortableness which everyone has not felt accountable to the public here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that comment, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge that the comments that were made last time, we take them seriously and we're working to address them. Some things are immediate and some things take longer, and so I just want to acknowledge that, thank you for saying that. And this committee and the district, take that very seriously, as do I as facilitator. And so, you know, everyone I think is here because we care about the air. And I think it's very easy for us to get emotional about that, and so I just wanted to take a moment to say this is a call in, not a call out, so thank you. And I'm gonna pass it to Janice to address some of those things.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up, Jose. Like I had mentioned, we are engaging with our district council to look more specifically on what is considered a conflict of interest. And so when we do have that information, I think we can have further discussions about that.
So can I ask a follow-up question? So as the air district.
Go, go.
A follow-up question?
So as the air district, can you spend 2,000 without a bidding process? What's the bar for that?
May I answer that one?
Please.
Yes.
Okay, so we did do an was it RFP?
Yes.
And we got 2 or 3 people that applied. And then
Can you say what an RFP is for those who don't know?
request for proposal.
Thank
And,
you.
and we had strict guidelines, what we were looking for them to do. And so we had like a scope of work, and then we interviewed the people. And then we made our selection based on the interview. There were several people on the committee, about maybe 4 or 5 people on that committee. And then we selected the one that closely matched what we were looking for at a price that that stayed with our budget. So we didn't just get, the person was not related to anybody on this committee. It was outside people that applied.
Thank you, Rhonda, and I would like to please remind Ann and Mike, that way people can hear. And really quick, I'm gonna go in the order that I saw hands, so, I don't know why I'm walking back. So Rhonda, did you have anything else to say? And if, yeah, I'll just let you answer that.
No, that's it. I just wanted to clarify that we did follow a legitimate process to make it fair.
Thank you, and then I think I did see Pat's hand up as well, next. Pat, did you want to speak?
Yes, I just want to, and I appreciate the points that are being made, but just a point of clarification for Jose. I was not trying to rush through an acceptance of the proposal. The standard operation had been, you make a motion, it comes up, and then it comes for discussion so that we could be able to raise the points of, and why is this the rate that's being asked for? Why, if we have a base rate, are we asking beyond the base rate?
all of those things. We did not get a chance to even get to that part of the discussion. So it was not a rush to approve. There was an attempt to try to get to the point of the discussion so those questions could be asked, or that the item be requested to be withdrawn or to be tabled to a future date. I do appreciate that we are going through and doing a review of process, procedure, and to be able to have it written down and codified. But the issue is that we have tried to remain accountable and to make sure that we were not doing self-dealing. So to that end, that is the process, as well as here in this group, the attempt has been, and the presumption is, that we're not here to do evil, but we're here to do good. And that the intent that we will start with is that we are trying to do that to our best effort and are here to be able to learn and to adjust and change as needed. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Pat. So I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the time. We can keep going a little bit since I know there's still a few more hands, but then we're going to keep going. And so I'm going to pass it to Janice first to pass some of those things.
Yeah, see your placard up from Armand and Erica. Just something really quickly, in the guidelines for usage of AB 617 funding, we do have purchasing policy requirements that we've outlined for the steering committee that, you know, any cost greater 500 will require an informal bid. They must, you know, obtain a minimum of 3 written quotes. There's, you know, you can't split purchases. And so there are requirements that we have put in place to help protect for what some of the concerns that you're bringing.
Okay, and then I believe the next order that I saw, oh, you have a mic already. I didn't see that. Go ahead.
Whatever. Remember, I want to say, JC, I just want to make very clear that because we're new to this process, very new, we would feel a lot more comfortable with some written policies, really clear steps on how vendors are chosen. You know, I don't want to start splitting hairs here all night about who out of $50 went. But I am curious, how does Civic Thread get reimbursed for $1,800? Was there a bidding process for that? No, I don't want an answer to that right now, please, don't worry about it. My question is, what's the process so we can understand it with our board member? We can provide him support from here on out. We are gonna look into how things have done in the past because we have been bringing up this concern for the last 4 years. And this is finally a space that we're allowed to clarify this thing. So we're not trying to vilify anybody. I think this is really a very good case study of banality. How do we just learn what the real procedures are, transparent procedures, so we can figure out how to move accordingly?
Yes, thank you for that comment. And I think it really emphasizes, you know, what we've been saying in the beginning and at the February follow-up of, you know, progress and change can be uncomfortable, and we're working to improve these things. We appreciate everyone's patience as we are bringing these things up and addressing them and, you know, working to improve those things. And then, yes, I just wanted to see if you wanted, okay, no, okay, great. I was mumbling. I wanted to see if Janice wanted to follow up. She was good, so now we'll pass to the other.
This is Erica Hunter with Saki JC. So first, I want to say this is not a slight on any of the steering committee members. I want to emphasize that as someone who works and has been working in the public sector for 7+ years now, this is on Saki QMD and making sure that processes are in place, infrastructure is in place, so that the steering committee members can do what they need to do and do it efficiently too. Especially if the budget is small and folks need to be nimble. The other thing is the procurement processes are really important. One, I want to acknowledge that if any of the steering committee members had to be a part of that RFP, whether that was writing it or developing an outline for it, I want to give you guys credit for that because I've done those myself and they're not my favorite. That's a huge lift. But I do highly recommend that if you do RFP processes for this money, which I think it is a good idea to do that, you do a pooled contracts and it's by outcomes. So if there are people that are showing their outcomes and are using this money better than other organizations that might not be showing up as much as we need to, or as the community needs them to, that you do pool contracts and that there's some measures or outcomes in there that are used, and that it's also done annually. So that's all I wanted to know.
Yes, thank you for that number. I think, once again, it is in pursuit of improving the process and streamlining things and making things more transparent. So we really appreciate this opportunity to follow up on those things and have more discussion. So thank you all for participating and listening in that. I'm gonna pass it to Rhonda, who has her hand up, and then I think after that, we will close it out unless, it leads to a question of the district or something. But Rhonda, I'm in front of the owl, so everyone can hear you. Go ahead.
Just for clarity, we did have outcomes, and that's how we measured each person that applied for the request for proposal. And we had a weighted scale for measuring and then voting, so that it would be, we would get what we wanted in terms of the best candidate for the job. Secondly,
I'm sorry, one moment, Rhonda. We weren't able to catch that for interpretation, so I'm sorry. Could I please have you repeat that just a little bit slower, perhaps?
Okay, I was talking about the, see, now I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, the vetting process. We did have outcomes. That was part of the scope of work and the outcomes. And we made sure we compared each vendor that applied that would meet our guidelines. And we made a selection based on a weighted scoring process. And then the one with the best score was the one that was selected and gave us the best bang for our buck, because we didn't want to just spend the money with anybody who would just charge us a lot of money. And we had a budget. We weren't trying to go over $5,000 to do the website. So we found someone that would go under, and that was great. And had quality and met all of our outcomes. Secondly, I wanted to address, someone mentioned about t-shirts. It's not out of the ordinary if you're doing outreach to have t-shirts and business cards so that you look legitimate to the public, number one, and they know that what you're representing, who you're associated with. So, and we got a very good deal on those t-shirts, very inexpensive deal. So I just wanted to point that out. That was to recognize us when we do tables and go in the public to present information about the air quality. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is, yeah.
I'm not sure if what was meant by outcomes means more participation in these meetings, more community awareness. So I went to your guys' event in Bowling Green, and it was largely desolate the entirety of the time I was there. So I'm not sure that's what she meant, but I think, that's what's meant, is something tangible happening in these meetings, more community participation. And I haven't seen it in 4 years, that's why we're here.
Thank you. All right, I think Jen, yeah.
So, we first, I'm gonna, I hear you, Saki JC, I hear that we're new to, you're new to the process, you wanna understand, that we need, processes where it's clear for all the steering committee members, and so, what I would like to do is to, have our council, like I said, come back so we can think a little bit about the processes, in place. And so with that, I would like for us to all have a little bit of, time to do that as well. We welcome the feedback. We know that you are all, committed to your communities. And so, if it's okay, I'm going to ask us to, move to the next agenda item while we have further discussions on the points that you guys have made.
Thank you, Janice, and I'm actually just gonna pass this mic back to you, to introduce the SERB considerations. Do you want this up first, or do you want to talk? No, okay, great.
All right. So for many years now, we first started as a community error monitoring plan community, a CAMP community. And, the community has shared with us their desire to really talk about the strategies, the outcomes, like what we can actually do to improve air quality in your community. And so, we are, there's been lots of discussion about moving to a CERP, a community emission reduction plan community. And that, what a CERP is basically a action plan, a program developed for the community to develop to reduce emissions or exposure. And so as part of the process, what does the CERP code mean? It means that we are starting the process of this discussion, can be selected as a CERP community, is to help us be recognized by the state so that we are a CERP community where the community is showing that it's committed to adopt a plan within a 2-year timeframe. CARB can take this recommendation in their July board, which then starts a 2-year clock for us to submit a CERP plan. So what are the benefits of transitioning to a CERP community? First, it is, we're gonna be focusing our efforts on developing local emission and exposure reduction strategies to meet the goals that you all are going to define. We're gonna have the benefit of lessons learned and strategies that other communities have also developed, but also targeting, what you guys all want to prioritize for the community here in South Sacramento. And CARB incentive guidelines are more flexible for CERB communities, so there's more type of projects that would be available using the CERB funding. And we do have funding secured to do this work. I know you all have advocated with us to secure this funding so that we can move forward. And so those are some of the benefits of moving to a CERB community. Just to round off the discussion, what are some of the considerations? Some of the considerations for you all. It is an increase in time and workload for the steering committee members. And we do have to be very focused and try to stay on schedule during the meetings to meet the deadline. There may be a potential increase in meeting frequencies so that we can have decisions or have more time to discuss the decisions that is needed to put into the CERP. And also, CARB has developed a Blueprint 2.0 that outlines the different elements of a CERP. And so I think that's it. No, next one. So what does the CERP designation process look like? So the CSC can vote presently to recommend to move to a CERP community. And then after a decision and a recommendation, the district would submit a letter to CARB, and then the CARB would work with the district to prepare technical materials for the CARB board hearing that will be in July. And so a lot of the topics that you all have brought up is a part of transitioning to a served community. And so, you know, community boundaries, and the tour, steering committee membership, outreach to, members, of, you know, an expanded boundary. We wanted to hear more information about air monitoring data. What does the community's emission inventory look like so we can target the sources that are impacting the community? What does budgets and funding look like? What are the different types of air quality strategies? Is it from, you know, stationary sources? Is it from land use? Is it from mobile sources? And then also talking about what the priorities are after we've identified the different types of strategies that you all are interested in, and prioritizing which projects to fund, and then also creating targets for emission reduction targets that you all want for the community. So all of these topics are a part of this process, and, you know, and we're really looking forward to having these discussions.
So thank you for that overview of what moving to a SERP could look like and what that process is kind of like. Since this is a discussion, I want to pass it to the co-leads to facilitate. Yeah, so there's.
I already have the microphone. What's that? Does anybody have any questions on what Janice just went over, the slides?
And since this is a voting item, we will hear from the steering committee first, but then since it is a voting item, we will hear from the public as well.
Thank you. I do have two questions in regards to before we take a vote on becoming a served community, wanting to become a served community. To that, it may be a question more for folks from CARB. How many of the steering committees are not currently served committees?
I think this is gonna be the final committee going into the CERT, so that would be 18 of the 19. And there are 4 that are in the process of developing their CERT and 13 that are in the process of implementing their CERT.
Thank you. Coming right back to you, I'm not gonna say historic, but what has been the time frame for each of the served communities? The time needed for them to put their plan together and have that plan submitted?
That's a great question. You know, early on, some of the communities would do it in 1 year, but I think what we found is that to do it through a truly community partner process, it takes more than a year. That's why that legislation was amended to make it 2 years. If it does go beyond 2 years, and some of the steering committees have had to, then the steering committee will just write a letter requesting an extension. CARB has granted 100% of the extensions, and we'll make sure you have the time you need to make sure you have a plan you all are ready to send forward to your board and actually the CARB to approve. So on average, about 2 years, so it's been probably average.
Sorry, one last question. Just for my own edification, when was the last served community brought in?
Northern Imperial, and then, and that was just nominated. I just started in August, I don't have these things printed in my brain, and then the other one was the border community in San Diego. And then I do want to mention that there are 2 communities that are in the process of finalizing their emission reductions plans, the development phase and moving into implementation. And those are Richmond, North Richmond, and Pablo, Bay Area, and also Northern Imperial.
And all of those were pre-August.
The question was if all of those were pre-August, and did you not? Yes. All right. Okay,
Okay, so now it gets my turn again, and so, I'm gonna introduce the motion to,
not yet. I thought there was more discussion. If you were gonna introduce a motion, we can do from the public first.
Okay.
Was that what you were gonna do?
Go ahead.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. I know it's a new process, so I'm just wanting to make sure we're following that. Are there any questions, from the public? Yes, I'm thinking my way over there.
Yeah, I asked this question last time and I didn't get a response. It was for you, Kevin. Is there anything to keep this steering committee from moving the air monitoring boundaries? At the same time they move the CERT boundaries?
I think that's a decision the steering committee needs to make. I think the boundaries can be voted on at any time. That there's no law, there's no regulation that says how they're designated. I think the steering committee sort of their districts on them, but CARB doesn't have regulations that would preclude that.
Thank you. So now my question is to the air district, would you guys be amenable to moving the air monitoring boundaries if the steering committee wants to move them?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, any other public questions or comments online or in person? All right, and I'll pass it back to the steering committee to discuss following that, or if you'd like to not discuss and make a motion, whatever you want.
well, I was supposed to introduce, the CERT committee has been meeting for 5 months already. So it's not like we haven't been discussing the CERT issues. We've already voted 2 months in a row to bring this motion to the steering committee, but we were sidetracked a couple of times, and so that's okay. But we're definitely ready. Some of the different topics we talked about was the Mac Road truck stop on Mac Road and Stockton Boulevard, which is for everybody who's in the community knows that trucks are parking there illegally, they're running all night long, they're doing a lot of different things there. And so we want to introduce how to improve that area to them, possibly through the CERT, and reduce the emissions coming from those trucks, especially the ones parking all along the streets over there. People have complained about that. Jesus brought up the tree planting on Consumnes Boulevard, as well as the congestion of traffic that is increasing over there with the new development. And so participating in that, reducing the transportation. We talked about transportation projects with regional transit and also without regional transit. There's no reason why that we can't do some kind of shuttle services for the community. And I've always said 47th Avenue doesn't have a bus stop. The light rail people walk all the way down the street to come to Franklin Boulevard, and it's been like that for years. And so these are just a few of the projects. Indoor air filters came out during the fire season, and we did build some indoor air filters. We did try to help the community, but people are talking about indoor air quality, not just during fire season. And so some of my friends who live in the larger apartment complexes, which there are several coming up in South Sacramento, complain about smoke in their apartments from their neighbors, not only cigarette, but marijuana smoke. Mow and blow projects, we've talked about that, refitting the landscaping industry with electric equipment to follow in lines with the city guidelines that are gonna be coming out and helping enforce that. Composting is a project that I've been working on lately, and so I've been learning that you can remove tons of organic waste from the dumps, which create greenhouse gases as well. And these are just different ways, other than just vehicle emissions, that we can work in the community. We have the vehicle buyback program. We have stationary sources that we haven't really talked about a lot about, but the biggest stationary pollution area in South Sacramento is right here on 47th and near the light rail station. And it's not just the spud cogeneration plant, it's also the can producing plant that's right there. I did talk to one lady today that was over here, the teacher, and I was telling her what we were doing here. She goes, well, it's easy to figure out the pollution. It's all the factories over on Colorado Road. And so those are the stationary sources that have used the same equipment for years, and if we could refit them with new projects or new, plants, that's just one of the ways. So we've been talking about a lot of different things. The point I'm trying to get at with the CERT subcommittee, and so moving forward with the CERT designation will help us get forward on moving these, and like Barry was asking, maybe we could fast track some of these, because we've already discussed a lot of them. And along with moving the boundaries, so they would include some of these other, stationary sources that we're looking at, so. Am I able to make the motion? Okay, so I'd like to make the motion that this. Oh, we have a question, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Vince. Vince just touched on it, but before the motion is made, so for absolute clarity, and, well, the motion hasn't been, there isn't a motion yet.
No, there isn't.
He's about to ask for one. In the motion, I will do it if no one else will, that we include the extension, with specific, street names for the extended boundaries for both CERB and the steering committee. So it's encompassed in the vote, so we don't have to, worry about trying to extend the boundary at a later time.
Thank you, Barry. I think you did jump the gun, though. Okay.
Is the, sorry, I'm just trying to clarify, that, the motion, is to, that the motion would be to, include in the discussion include into the discussion moving the, monitoring as well, monitoring as well as the CERB boundaries, is that correct?
Is there the microphone?
Oh,
In answer to your question, the short answer is we're voting to see if we want to meet the CERB. But to make sure included in that discussion, as part of stated, we can extend those boundaries. I just want to make sure that those boundaries are in the decision of do we want to become a CERB? So it's tied together for both the extension of the community, for the steering committee and the CERB boundaries. I have a second one. I'll let you answer that first.
Yes, so we're able to do that.
And the second one, are these initiatives backed by a written air monitoring report? And how have you reached the decision on where the boundaries are?
Could you, please repeat that question, and clarify? I'm trying to understand it better.
Are the
I don't
initiatives,
understand it.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
oh, there was,
I know, but.
my apologies. Are there initiatives backed by a written air monitoring report that shows let me get it completely. That will show that shows what's the best word I'm trying to use here?
Need.
The data and the need for where our current boundaries are and or where extended boundaries that we've discussed for many months could be. So is there data that shows, hey, this is the current boundaries, this is the pollution, and this is the reason behind this current boundary, showing that it's the higher end? And is there information that will, that is available to show us on the extended boundaries that we just, discussed in service of committee meetings, which is extending the boundaries out to include the executive airport, to include, South Meadowview Road, the CNG filling, facility, 47th Avenue, the old Campbell Soup that's Vincent just stated, going a little bit further east, a little bit further south, including the factories on Powering Road.
So part of the process is to provide the steering committee information about emission inventory. So the first question is whether or not there's air monitoring data. So we have monitored in our current boundaries, and that's the information that we have. In addition to that, the district has also, in partnership with the city of Sacramento, have also developed or has also monitored in some of the areas that the steering committee has also shown interest and have discussed in the past. And that could also, help, I think, with the discussion about like what air pollution, what are the levels of air pollution in those areas, and so another tool for us to use. But I think it's important to underscore that as part of this process, CARB is going to help us, develop a community inventory that shows us what the sources of pollution and how much of the pie that, how much of the pie each category might have to help inform the decisions that we need to make. And so we know a lot about air pollution. There are also, things we don't know and we're continuing to learn. But we do have information, and I think even Kevin can speak to the other communities across the state that have embarked on doing a SERP with emission inventory data and then backed by, refining that information with air monitoring data. So I'm going to pass it to Kevin.
All right, yeah, first of all, to that point, I'd be more than happy to, I went through this whole process. I had the Bay Area Quality Management District, working closely with me in Richmond, North Richmond, San Pablo, all the way through when they voted to move forward with the SERP, and they selected the boundary after, how they developed and prioritized strategies. And I, those folks last week when they're in town for a conference, and they'd be excited for the opportunity to meet with you all and advise in terms of how they made those decisions as community members. In terms of the boundary, that's not always, but most of the time, it is defined after the community moves forward with the SERP. And as Janice said, we'll be providing data with the air districts. We'll have maps of all the stationary sources, the emissions levels from those, enforcement history, monitoring data, we'll put it all together. So you all have a full picture in terms of where there are pollution concerns, where there's, the greatest risk, and then we will answer any questions until you all decide to move forward with the boundary that you select for yourself. And at that time, you can also make the decision to say, we want this boundary to represent the CAMP and the SERP jointly.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
I don't know who that was talking, but I agree. I don't think we should vote on both of them together. This is Rhonda.
Rhonda, we couldn't hear that because I didn't have the mic next to the owl. So would you be able to say that again?
Yes, I don't know who that was just speaking, but I agree with that person. I don't think we should not combine the SERP vote with the boundary vote. They should be separate so we have a chance to strategically select the boundaries and have the reasons why we're selecting them. And then that way we can vote on the ones that we need to give the most attention to.
Is that a motion?
Stephanie asked if that was a motion.
Yes.
That's my motion, yes.
Before there's a comment on a second, I want clarification to just make sure that if we were to include the extended boundaries for both SERP and steering committee as the motion to wanting to become a SERP, can we then at a future time further extend the boundaries after getting the data and hearing more from the community? So right now, we would be under the protection to make sure that discussions we've had for, it's been stated the last 5 months in SERP subcommittee meetings that I've been a part of, as well as a few other steering committee members. So it would not hurt us by any means, including that now, because we would invite Kevin's nodding, he's saying, yes, we could further extend later as well. Thank you.
I disagree, so.
I'm sorry, Rhonda, I heard you, but we need to follow the order of who has the mic and everything, so I will let you say that in one moment. I just need to see, Janice, did you need to follow up on that?
So also just a few things, tools that we can all use. There's also, environmental, EJ screen, the CARB has a website on the community air toxics, as well as the Cal virus screen to also help us, guide those boundary discussions for the steering committee.
All right, thank you, Janice, and I saw Stephanie's placard have been up for a while, so she's next.
Just wanted to second the motion to move to a certain vote without identifying the boundaries. So I second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. And I see some placards.
Thank you, I missed those.
Yeah, I think as a point of clarification, I don't think it was being asked that you vote where the boundaries are, but that you vote with the intent that you're gonna expand the boundaries. And I don't wanna speak for Barry, but it sounded like two different conversations. I mentioned this before, and I gotta invoke Dr. King's comment that if people have decisions made about them without them having an ability to vote on them, you know, that's an injustice. And so when you guys do have the vote for the certain boundaries, I think people outside of the steering committee who are in those potential communities should have a say as well as to whether the boundaries are expanded or not. And Dr. King's version of justice, that would be justice. And, you know, I don't speak for Sac EJC, they're not trying to vilify anybody. I am, you know, because of what I see. And so that's how I'm writing with this. And thank you.
Thank you, and you can actually pass, yeah. There's a comment next to you.
So I encourage the members of the steering committee that, what we hear out there when we're meeting with folks is that they don't know who you are. So I think we need to do a lot more work on that, right? We're happy to help, because District 5, for example, City Council District 5, has some of the worst polluted areas, and it's not included in these values. And for us, we want to be represented well, and what that means is that we need to do the kind of work that's necessary to solve these problems, because AB 617 was intended for that, an additional support to help marginalized BIPOC communities. I always ask people this when we do our trainings: what would AQMD be doing if there was no AB 617? Just ignore the problems? I'm sure they have an ordinary, everyday function to serve here in South Sacramento. So now that we have AB 617, we get extra money, extra support. But then these boundaries reduce this project to a very limited effort where it didn't highlight the most impacted communities. So my encouragement, and this is only my advice to the steering committee members, your vote goes into history about how you decided for South Sacramento. So I would ask that we have more patience to listen and expand and be very inclusive, because the 4 hospital systems in this county have told us that people are dying prematurely 15 years, mostly because of chronic health conditions connected to pollution, air pollution, stationary sources. And there are other sources. But my point is that how are we going to respond to this public health crisis of South Sacramento, where asthma rates that are 100%? These are not things to look by easily and say, okay, let's just change the mold line machine. That's not the reason why people are very sick in this town. There are deeper issues.
Thank you for both of those comments. We do not have time for much more, but I'm gonna allow 3 at least that I see. So I do believe, yeah, Rhonda, you were first, but just one moment, because I gotta walk over to the owl. I already got to it. Okay, we're ready.
Okay, I think it's already been said by Janice and others that we do intend to expand the boundaries, and we can do that. The camp does not say we can't do that, so there's no limitation on that. So we're not saying that we're not gonna expand the boundaries. I'm just saying we need to separate the vote. That's all.
Thank you, Rhonda. I'm gonna pass it to Kevin next, since I saw your platform first.
I'll be very brief. I just want to make a quick point of clarification. What my statement earlier, my statement.
Yeah.
I would think my statement earlier wasn't clear, so I have to be unclear. The steering committee is required to vote again for the boundary. You don't just transfer it over. Every steering committee that transitions from a camp to a SERP is required to adopt a new boundary. So whether you decide to keep the same boundary or whether you want to extend the boundary, that vote is required. So to your question earlier, that's why I was nodding my head yes, because in the future, you will have to have it. And I think there should be a lot of discussion and data, and that's what I heard from the Air District, and then you all will decide on the final boundary.
Thank you, and Barry, I saw you were next.
Thank you, I appreciate that, and hearing the being involved with the SERP subcommittee for the last 5 months and hearing the public's input as well. I see why there's, that there isn't a reason that we extend the boundaries now in a motion to which, excuse me, let me finish that point. And as it was just stated by Art, once this, once we receive SERP designation, we will then vote on a new boundary or keeping the same boundary, and we'll have more information at that point. What is current and what has been current at the inception of the steering committee is the higher polluted areas that are currently not included in the South Sacramento Florin Steering Committee's boundaries. To that, I'd like to introduce a second motion that we do include the boundaries that have been put forward in the SERP subcommittee meetings over the last 5 months and in a couple of the steering committee meetings. If further clarification for street names, let me put that on record. And the boundaries that have been discussed for the last 5 months in the SERP subcommittee meetings, starting point was Freeport Boulevard and Fruit Ridge Road, south to Consumnes River Boulevard, and
Sorry, can you repeat that, please? And a little slower, just the names of the roads.
sorry. The boundary, starting points, Freeport Boulevard and Fruit Ridge Road, going south to Consumnes River Boulevard and Freeport Boulevard, east to Powering Road and Consumnes River Boulevard, north on Powering Road to Fruit Ridge. I think it's Fruit Ridge Boulevard and Fruit Ridge Road. That is my motion, the second motion on, for those boundaries to be included with the vote if we are seeking to become a SERP community.
Thank you. I'll pass it to Vincent.
Okay, so there was a few things I was gonna discuss, and then, so just so everybody knows, at the SERP meeting, we discussed voting to move to the SERP. Number one bulletin on there is moving the community boundaries. These aren't in order, but that is what our next meeting is gonna be about, is moving the boundaries. And thank you, Barry, for stating the boundaries, but they were incorrectly stated. So it's, and I'll slow down. Freeport Boulevard to Fruit Ridge Road on the northwest corner. Fruit Ridge Road to, somebody help me, is it Florin Grove? But that's Elk Grove, Florida, that's our current boundary. And then you go all the way down south, and I don't know where it ends over there either. But I believe we come up Sheldon to Franklin, and Franklin to Consumnes Road to Freeport again. And so that south side of our boundary is really kind of wavy, and I don't know what street, but I know it's Sheldon to Franklin. And Franklin to, Consumers Road all the way to Freeport Boulevard, and I know I just confused everybody, but I would just like to reemphasize that we were interested in voting on becoming a subcommittee, or CERT committee, voting, I'm confused now, but the CERT process, voting on that, and then we're gonna vote on the boundaries later, and we all have maps here, but we don't have them this month, because we weren't prepared to look at the maps together and decide on those boundaries, but our boundaries do go from Fort Ridge Road all the way to, what was it, Richard? Outgrove Florence, yes,
So Vincent, if I could just add something.
thank you.
Great. We know this is an important discussion. In terms of where the boundaries need to be, including voices, where we're gonna be talking about moving the boundaries to Jose's point and, getting that input. So and even as we're discussing it, I do not think that we have a clear idea because we don't have a map that everybody's looking at, to make a clear distinction of where the boundaries, need to be. And so my recommendation to the steering committee and our commitment to the steering committee is that we will be talking about expansion of the boundaries. We know that that's important. We want to give you the tools to make that decision and for your consideration. And so tonight, we really want to start this process with you all so that, we have information and data that you all have been wanting to make these informed decisions.
And I would just like to quickly remind folks of the time, we did start 11 minutes late, so we have some time, but we have time, so I would just ask you to consider that.
I would say I'm gonna sit here quiet, and I take offense to the things I heard. We started this committee, I believe, over 5 years ago. And when I hear folks say that we haven't done this in 4 years, we haven't done that, I can go all the way back to the very first day when we discussed, looked at the maps of the areas that we were gonna add, and we were gonna get to that later date, which is today. And to say that we haven't done this, I'm gonna publicly say, I think every agency and person sitting here has done an exceptional job. And I live in South Sacramento, I know what the asthma rate is now. I sit on the board of directors for a medical firm, I know what it is, and they're working tremendously hard to do some things. So I take offense when folks come in here and say, we are not doing this, we have not done that in over 4 years. I take offense to that, because I wouldn't be sitting here if we weren't doing things that we're supposed to be doing.
I ask that we keep our comments to the motions and the discussion on the table, but thank you, Chris Baker.
Yes, so, is this working? Yes. I'm gonna read a comment from a steering committee member in the chat, and then I'll pass it to Pat. And then once again, I'd like us to think about the time. So in the chat, Rhonda said, by voting for a CERT, it gives us the option to extend the boundaries to get a more inclusive community of impact. It can then be inclusive when we do that. I want to be able to refer to maps and discuss reasons for including said boundaries. And I will now pass it to Pat. I have the mic in front of the owl, so you may speak, Pat.
I call for the motion that was seconded for a vote. Let's vote.
Okay.
Excuse me, there was a second motion. Point of order. Point of order. There was a second motion on the table that has to be addressed first. And I'd like to amend the second motion that it was my mistake by saying our intro, for clearing that up, it's Outgrove Florence. It was,
So that motion needs a second to be voted on. Is there a second for that motion?
I'm sorry, I would just like to clarify, when we have numerous people speaking at the same time, we cannot interpret. So I'm gonna pass it to Barry to finish the thought, and then we may proceed.
Thank you. Again, just for clarity, amending the second motion, which the Eastern order would be Elk Grove flooring, not Power Inn, just clarification. And to the point of where the boundaries from the inception of the steering committee was much broader than what it currently is. And to then, I see absolutely nothing wrong with extending the boundaries now. And that can also be extended even further if need be, once granted the CERC community status. It seems to be a very big pushback for including a greater number of communities with a higher pollution index. By looking at your Calenviro screens, will show that the current AQMD steering committee boundaries that are, that we currently have.
I know we're going to Robert's Rules of Order now, so I'm confused on how many motions we have on the floor. I know there was one of those motion made and seconded, and I don't think anybody seconded the other motions yet.
That's true.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So I do want to pass it to Pat since she had her hand up.
Hearing no second for that motion, I move that we take up the first motion and move to a vote.
Okay, the second motion that we would move to the vote on the first recommendation.
Second.
Seven
Okay.
is seconded.
I heard it. Okay, we're gonna call for the vote, and, okay, so we'll start with the people in the room. Chris Baker. Yes. Richard Lincoln. Aye. Morgan Brown. Barry Boyd.
Abstain.
Bill Knowlton. Yes. Stephanie Williams.
Yes.
Somebody is keeping track, right? Okay, thank you. Vincent Valdez, yes. And we'll go to the people online. Rhonda Henderson,
Aye.
Pat Shelby,
Yes.
Jamala Green.
Nope. Michael Lampkin. And
Yes. Okay, that was Michael Lampkin.
Repeat that one.
Jamala Green,
Aye.
okay, there we said yes. Michael Lampkin,
Yes.
thank you. Looks like we have it looks like we're moving to a CERC, yay! Just want to remind everybody, we will be talking about boundary moving next month for sure, that's top priority.
Okay, I'm taking this mic back, but there's still one over there because they seem to keep switching whether they're working or not. So, thank you all for that. We close out the discussion items. Okay, and now we'll move into subcommittee updates. So, I'm going to put the mic in front of Owl and pass it to you, Rhonda.
I don't have anything to discuss today. My only contribution was showing the budget for tonight for our outreach team.
All right, thank you so much, Rhonda. Vincent, do you have another CERB update?
Sure do. Our CERB meeting meets the first Tuesday of every month. We're currently online. You can move to in person if you guys want to. We'll be sending invitations to everybody. Please attend and please help us develop this CERB in a good timely manner.
All right, thank you for that CERB update. That was scary, but we were okay. All right, I would like to see, so we did discuss before the vote, but then since we just had subcommittee updates, even though they were very brief, I am gonna ask, are there any questions about subcommittee updates specifically? Hearing none. All right, we are going to go ahead and move then into new business and upcoming meeting topics. So I'm asking the members right now, if you have any new business We do have an upcoming meeting, April 22nd, is the steering committee meeting. And, we did briefly talk about, next meeting topics, but when we said potential meeting topics, apologies, when we had the CERT slide up on the screen. But I would like to pass it to Stephanie, to introduce, the topic for April. If that mic is working, and if not, I'll run this one.
All right, so some of the topics as we discussed, in having a, now that we're going to move into CERT, we'll be talking about the continuation of the community boundaries, as a point of discussion, as we've indicated here. And then also, going back and having some discussions on the, bus tour. That was one of the other things that had come forth, from the steering committee to be able to go out and do the bus tour, to also provide us with some additional information. And we are looking at extending those boundaries. So those will be two topics for discussion moving forward in our, April meeting. Any questions or comments from steering committee? On the line? Any questions or comments from the public on that update?
Are there any community calendar dates or events to add from the public or steering committee members?
Sure. The Dia de la Tierra event will be right here at La Familia Community Neighborhood Center, April 13th. I encourage everybody to come, especially steering committee members to table. Cesar Chavez March is this 30th at Southside Park. It's this Saturday. I won't be tabling there. And then, I think there's something else, but I can't think of it right now. But yes, there's a March event this weekend for Cesar Chavez.
Yeah, I also did want, thank you, Vincent, for that update. One other thing that I did want to bring to the steering committee is for us to think about what the next few months are going to look like in terms of topics. And so, as you saw, the whole list of topics moving forward to discuss, and it's important for the Air District to be able to put together and prepare for the materials for those meetings. And so we are asking for the steering committee to help us plan the topics for the next 5 or 6 months so that we can better prepare the technical information that all of you need for those particular topics.
And just for clarification, part of that preparation is to make sure that the translation service, interpretation services, and all of those things are together, and then also what needs to be done in print, as far as agendas and things like that. Okay, just one clarification.
All right, and then I'm gonna pass it to David.
So I want to invite everybody to come to our Environmental Justice Awards night. It'll be at Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish on April 20th at 6 p.m. We have a Chief Lonco Juanita Villan. She's a world-renowned environmentalist from Chile who's here on asylum now because she's being persecuted in her country for being an environmentalist. She'll be our keynote speaker. We'd love for you to hear her story. It's incredible. And of course, come check out the people who are going to get awards for doing community organizing and around environmental justice in Sacramento County. Barry is one. Sorry, Barry. Thanks.
What do you think about David again? There was a request for the date, and the date is
April 20th at Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish, 6 p.m.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a question if you guys plan to publish a report using the data you gathered from your camp over the last several years. And I'd like to ask the bishop or Vincent if they're aware of any toxic hotspots that were of concern because of that air monitoring. Or if there are any, if there aren't, I mean, you guys spoke like you really knew what was going on, you really involved, you're offended. So I'm trying to see if you have a basic understanding of the air monitoring camp that's been going on and how well you've been informed. Because a lot of the information you shared was just kind of dolo, and I'm not sure it was based on a report. And as a member of the community, a report would help me share it with other folks who are smarter than me and can help me analyze it. And before I close, because your boss is here, I think you're doing a wonderful job, Janice. You got a lot to work with, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I'd like to provide some information as well. So we have come to the steering committee with, some of the results from the air monitor. So the steering committee has been, shared some of that information. We do have in the camp commitment a report that we have been, and David's team been very hard working on, to provide that information, that report that you're asking for. And so, that's in the works, but you know how the review process goes, so I do ask for a limitation from that.
Thank you. And I haven't been offended about anything today, but I do know that when we did our phase 2 monitoring, the worst pollution in the monitoring was right here on 47th Avenue at the fire department, station 56, I can't remember what number it was. And the second worst position was over on Pomeroy Road near the VFW hall, where we had our other phase 2 monitor. Those are the two top most polluted contaminants that we found, and then they were in the toxics, the VOCs and the PM 2.5. I can't think of the name of it, I read it, it's in there in the reports that we did receive from the phase 2 monitoring. I have been hammering the air district to give us some phase 3 monitoring data, and it's still being analyzed and it's still being analyzed and verified. And so that's why I constantly say I like to see the phase 3 live feed, because it tells you a 6-month window of what's in the air that's being analyzed, but it's not verified yet. And so I'm not gonna ask the air district again, but I have been asking for that information.
Thank you for that. It highlights that the worst was right on the boundary.
Please use the mic.
Thank you.
But I was just thinking, Vince, for that information, but because it highlights that the worst findings were right at the 86-17 boundary. And, you know, extending it seemed like an easy decision.
And then I just wanted to say, obviously, we couldn't tell until after the question was made, but these were intended to be questions and comments relating to new business and upcoming meeting topics. So while we appreciate that comment, it would have been better fit under public comment. We did receive a few comments in the chat that I would like to read out loud for everyone. Rhonda posed the question, are we discussing the increased boundaries next month? And I'm just gonna read Pat's comment before we can address those. Pat said, MAP's discussion and what the CERC committee has been discussing should be a priority. Pat then said, that can be a part of next meeting to know what we have received and are doing. So those are the comments that were, there was also a question. Is there an answer for the question?
Yes and yes, all of those things above is what the plan is for next month's meeting, April's meeting, to have the discussions, to take a look at those maps. Yes, and to look at the extended boundaries.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Could I also ask the CERC subcommittee to look at what, you know, the next 5 months looks like after that, so that we can be prepared to, you know, to discuss the other topics as well?
Sure.
The answer was yes. All right, so we did get started at 6:12. It is 8:16, so we are 4 minutes over. That being said, as we make space for public comments that are not in relation to any of the agenda items that have already been discussed, I'd like to see if there are any public comments that, like I said, are not in relation to what has already been discussed today. Any in person or online?
Is that for any one of us or like the public?
It's a public comment. All right, We are going to move into adjournment. I will give you some reminders. So, there will be a poll sent out, for the main meeting. And I want to thank everyone again for your patience. Sorry, we're running a few minutes over. Congratulations on moving to a cert. And, we are going to go ahead and end with our clap. So for those of you who don't know, we say, what do we want? And the answer is South Sac Clean Air, and then we clap. I'm gonna have to set down this mic to do it, but I'll try and speak in front of the mic for accessibility as always. What do we want?
South Sac Clean Air.
Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned at 8:17 p.m.
Thank you again, Brenna.